Imagine that. No representation that looks like you in the law.
Welcome into Local Roots. I'm Alicia Barnes, and today we're going to talk about the west side of Charlotte, and that is McCrorey Heights. As you look around, when you're in the area, you know that you are just kind of swallowing up history. I have two of my favorite people joining us, Dr. Tom Hanchett, who is with History South, and he is an urban historian, knows so much. You're just a regular here on Local Roots. Dr. Hanchett, thank you so much for being here. We love your expertise. And of course, somebody who is from Charlotte, born and raised, and lives in McCrorey Heights is Winston Robinson. Winston, this is your second or third time on the show, right? I think second time? Second time.
Absolutely.
Okay. Always bringing it, and we just appreciate you giving us your perspective. I want to start off with, take us where we are with McCrorey Heights. Dr. Hanchett, I'm going to turn it over to you right now, just to kind of, we have a map to show everybody where we're talking about, but just kind of lay out why this area is so historical and what it means to Charlotte.
Well, if you head from the center city northwest, actually, a weird way the streets are laid out, you get to Johnson C. Smith University, which is a historically black college, been around since 1867, training preachers and teachers coming out of slavery times. In the 20th century, H.L. McCrorey, Reverend H.L. McCrorey, was the president, and his professors and their families could not live in many parts of Charlotte. There were deed restrictions. There were all sorts of things that kept black people out of places like Cotswold.
Yeah.
And so beginning in 1912, he laid out a neighborhood called McCrorey Heights. And most of the construction is actually about the same time as the Cotswold neighborhood in South Charlotte. Red brick ranch houses from the 1950s, 1960s, and a center for not only ministers and professors, but entrepreneurs, civil rights leaders. A couple of years ago, City Council designated that as the most recent of the historic districts in Charlotte.
I know that you two met discussing McCrorey Heights, from what I understand. What was it about McCrorey Heights that made you say, you know what, this is something I've got to learn, I've got to tap into, especially for people here that are saying, you know, I've heard of McCrorey Heights, but I don't really know of what all it brings to the foundation?
Well, we used to do bus tours, still do actually, with Community Building Initiative. And every time that John Howard, who's a city planner now with the Historic Preservation Agency, went through, we would say somebody should write up that neighborhood. And then in 2015, I retired, and we sat down with folks in McCrorey Heights and said, would you like this to happen? And folks said yes. And so after a couple of years, there's a wonderful website that you can find.
Yeah.
Just Google McCrorey, McCorey, and historysouth.org, and you'll get there.
Winston, you live there in McCrorey Heights, and we're going to show our viewers later on. You kind of take me on a tour there of the area, but kind of just from living there now, why it was so important for you to buy a house in this neighborhood.
I'm going to tell you, and I thank Dr. Hanchett because he put scholarship to sentiment, something I've always felt. I've known about McCrorey Heights my entire life. My grandparents were co-founders of a church on Oakline Avenue, First Mayfield Memorial Baptist Church. And after every service growing up, well, most services, my mom, we would stop at Peso's supermarket, a family-owned supermarket right there, get things for Sunday dinner, and she would take me home through McCrorey Heights out the way and tell me the stories about every home that was her doctor, her teacher, her principal, just giving me all of this history. I'm just an ungrateful kid. I want to go home. I want to watch football, so I don't want to be there. And she... To realize that she wasn't talking to me at that ungrateful age of 8 or 9, she was preparing me for the adult. So now I understand how hallowed these grounds are. I understand the oral history from all of these homes that I've always known, to bring the context to now, this is how we should be stewards of Charlotte. This is the standard. Every one of these houses contributed to this city in ways that we can't even quantify. Now I see this as a space that we have to maintain this. This is important to us. This is culture.
Yeah, just to take it a little deeper, I mean, when I walked around the neighborhood, for you to be able to show me these houses and their history, There's even a Martin Luther King Jr. tie to the neighborhood.
Yes.
Tell me what that was.
I feel terrible because Dr. Hanchett is sitting right next to me.
Well, Dr. Hanchett, if you want to be able to explain, just so people can, because I was taken back.
One of the ties, I mentioned there are a number of them, but one of them is that when King came to Charlotte, the person who welcomed him when he came off the stage was Dr. Reginald Hawkins, who was the reputed to be the most militant. He wasn't really. He was just pushy. Of the civil rights leaders in Charlotte, and the folks who are around him, David Belton, who's still around Charlotte today, and Gerard Benson, who recently passed away. They were kids cut in school, and they were folks who lived in that neighborhood. All of those people. And then if you go to Charlotte's civil rights history, Reginald Hawkins' house was bombed in 1965 because of his civil rights activism, which went back at least to the mid-1950s. 1954, we got a new terminal out at the airport. It's still there. It's the freight terminal. Mm-hmm. But it had restaurants, and Black people were not welcome in the restaurants. And Reginald Hawkins and his neighbors got together, went out, sat in, and changed that history right there.
Wow. Any thoughts, Winston?
Yeah, that story. So I got to go back to it. And I had to talk to literally the children of Dr. Hawkins. Dr. King was supposed to stay there on the day of his assassination. Wow. He was supposed to be here for a fundraiser for Dr. Hawkins, and he was to stay at that home.
In McCrorey Heights?
In McCrorey Heights.
Wow.
Stayed in Memphis because he felt like the sanitation workers, it had some motion. So he had to extend his trip. Literally called the older sibling of the Hawkins children. They sat in my living room and told me this. And he was already at the airport waiting. He didn't. Yeah. So this is a community right here in Charlotte. We have that in one home as an example. And the thing is, every house has a significant story that ties nationally. Right across the street, Miranda Rice, please, Charles Bell, Dr. Hanchett.
Charles Bell, Attorney Bell. Everybody calls him Attorney Bell, even though he has been gone for so long. One of two major path-breaking attorneys in that neighborhood. And one of the things that he did, which was, you're talking about the Miranda rights thing, and I don't remember that story as much as I remember him going to bat for people who are getting kicked out of Brooklyn by urban renewal, and the government would make a lowball offer, and unless you had a lawyer with you, you didn't get anything near what you were really owed. And time and again, I'm pretty sure he didn't get paid. He went and helped people that way.
I'm going to have to pause it and leave it right there just for a moment. We're going to have so much more on the other side of Local Roots. For now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, though, you're going to hear from the president of McCrorey Heights, Sean Langley, kind of giving us an update as to what it looks like present day.
But also just the pivotal African-American leaders that shaped the course of not only local history, but I think national history as well, especially as it pertains to like the civil rights movement, but also just locally here in Charlotte in terms of city government, being the first county commissioner, being the first Black police officer.
3 college presidents all lived at the same time. That was Johnson C. Smith's president's house. That was Barbara Scotia's president's house, and this was Livingstone's president's house. Dr. Green and his wife, other Dr. Green, they still live there.
You're just watching there a clip from when we had on Queen City News. Actually went to McCrorey Heights, met the president of McCrorey Heights there for the Homeowners Association. And Winston, you showing me 3 presidents just living right there on that corner. Incredible. And just the proximity to Johnson C. Smith University. Let everybody understand that.
Right. Yeah. This is, again, a community founded by the second Black president of the institution, Dr. H.L. McCrorey. You know, he purchased this land in 1912. Yeah, it took to 1949 to file that plat map to really lay out the community. But what he did was he nurtured a sentiment. He nurtured a feeling. He created, is almost like, man, just a lived experience that became a think tank. And so much history, so much was forwarded to that. In that video clip, that was almost a conversation for the business side of things, because I'm bragging on my equity. That is my return on investment.
Right.
You know, I get to live there. Yes. I'm like, wait a minute, that is incredible, because I'm raising children. And as much as I revere MLK, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, I can take them to the corner, which is literally 2 houses down, and tell them that.
You can even take them out the backside of your house and show your kids your history. What's behind you?
The home of Charles White, the first attorney the NAACP ever hired, an attorney who represented and was instrumental. I believe the second black attorney, or the first in town, Dr. Hanchett.
One of the first, yeah.
Imagine that. No representation that looks like you in the law.
And I talked to his widow, and she remembered Thurgood Marshall staying there when they came down to South Carolina to
Right there in the
work
neighborhood.
on right in their house,
In their house.
little tiny house. And that the Brown versus Board of Education case is actually 5 cases. The first came out of South Carolina, and Reverend J.A. Delane helped Thurgood Marshall file it. Thomas White in Charlotte made that connection. And when the Delane family was burned out of their house in South Carolina, they came to Charlotte. And the next house over from one of the president's houses there is of Reverend Delane's family. They have a Congressional Gold Medal from their importance in the civil rights movement. So almost every house.
Yeah.
Briggs v. Elliott was the case.
Yeah.
Briggs v. Elliott. So again, instrumental. All of that ties together from a national history perspective, and it gets to happen in this very unassuming 160 home community in the west side of Charlotte.
So when you go there now, you see people kind of updating their homes. What's the feel? What's the sentiment there?
Well, the homes are now protected because McCrorey Heights has been designated locally historic, and we have a historic district. So
That's recent.
That is of the last 2 years, I believe. So yeah, so more than anything, you get to still keep the physical embodiment of something that represents these stories. You can point to these homes, the house of Elizabeth Randolph or Dr. Hawkins or Waddell, all of these names who were instrumental in building the Charlotte we have today. We have these monuments that represent them.
Now, do they have tours, Dr. Hanchett, in McCrorey Heights for people
It would
to
be a
understand?
great thing to do.
That would be an amazing.
Like Winston gave me a
sit
tour.
down with folks and
But,
talk about how to do that.
To do a tour. I mean, just to be able to understand, because for
It's
people
duty.
who
It's
are
necessary.
from outside of Charlotte, like myself, I have to write down these names that I hear from Winston, then go home and then look and say, okay, who is this person? Look this person up. Where for you, this is just common knowledge. But I think that part of learning your history, people are, wanting to be able to know, okay, well, hey, let me take this house. I think it'd be great to have a tour of McCrorey Heights. There's so much there.
Yeah, you're right.
And what it means to Johnson C. Smith. Kind of talk to me about that and how that came about.
Yeah. This is the community.
Reverend McCrorey was a visionary, and he started with a little tiny college that had been put together basically to teach literacy to people coming out of slavery. And in the 19-teens, 1920s, he pulled in the Johnson C. Smith family, which was a white family from Philadelphia. I don't know how they made that connection, but that is how the college got renamed. A lot of new building done in the 1920s. And Reverend McCrorey thought about community beyond the college as well. The McCrorey YMCA, which is now up 80s Ford Road, used to be in the old Brooklyn neighborhood downtown. And Mr. Goodwin, who raised the money for that and was the head of that, lived in McCrorey Heights. And so there are all these connections. The more you know about Charlotte landmarks, Charlotte schools, E.E. Waddell. There's a school named for E.E. Waddell, who was the last black principal at the premier black school, Second Ward High School.
How does that stem from the Brooklyn era to McCrorey Heights, just so I can kind of understand?
There's not there's not a straight sort of causality thing.
Okay.
The Brooklyn, for folks who don't know, is the area where the government center is, the new medical college, the NASCAR Hall of Fame, all of that. And that was demolished in the late 1960s through something called urban renewal, which was not at all. And 1,000 families kicked out.
Now, did those families move toward McCrorey Heights?
Some of them moved up Beatties Ford Road.
Okay.
McCrorey Heights was already well underway.
Oh, it was.
And you had to have a fair amount of money to move into McCrorey Heights. And so some folks did, but more moved to West Boulevard, Wilkinson Boulevard, Beatties Ford Road, places like that.
Yeah.
You really had to have it together to move to McCrorey. That was black suburbia. That was away from, Brooklyn was urban living. So, again, the people who would have gone to McCrorey Heights would have been that higher earning group of people who, are looking for what has always been the lens of suburbia.
What do you want people to know about McCrorey Heights?
It is important. It is significant. The history is not only meaningful to Charlotte, but again, a national story. However, this city that I love so dearly, I think there could be more reverence and a showing of love for this beautiful community that has gone through many challenges with our local municipality, whether it is the Vest water treatment plant that was used by built on land taken from Dr. H.L. McCrorey, or Highway 16, taking away houses from the community, separating it from the institution of its founding, and even now, the I-77 widening project, another instance of a perpetual narrative where the highways or, again, just government comes through to take more of an already small community.
Dr. Hanchett, your thoughts?
This is a locally significant area. It is eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. It is a designated historic district, which does not stop demolition, which is a kind of a weird thing that's written into North Carolina law, but it does give neighbors the chance to comment. And so celebrating this neighborhood like Winston Robinson does is so important.
Yeah. We'll have much more on the other side of this break. Stay with us. You're watching Local Roots on Queen City News Plus. I'm Alicia Barnes.
Don't you get weary, walk together, children. Don't you get weary, walk together, children. Don't you get weary, there's a great camp.
Bringing in just the sounds there of Johnson C. Smith, of the choir. I had to be able to bring that element in. It just kind of sets the tone. When you get to McCrorey Heights, of course, I want to point out that Johnson C. Smith is not technically in McCrorey Heights, but it is in the West Charlotte area and means so much to the history of McCrorey Heights. So, Winston, I mean, I know this episode of McCrorey Heights has got you feeling some kind of way inside. What do you want people to know as they learn about where you live?
I'm telling you, it's not in McCrorey Heights, but it is of McCrorey Heights. Again, the spirit resonates through West Charlotte, West Side. It is essentially the heart of Black Charlotte. So many names, so many things.
We've got to talk about the Excelsior Club, right?
Excelsior, Jimmy McKee, the Excelsior Club. More than a club, not only is the physical aspects, the Goth Martyr, is that it, Dr. Hanchett? Mm-hmm. The building itself is a historic landmark, but the sentiment, what it did for the political climate of Charlotte, founded by Jimmy McKee, who lived in McCrorey Heights, who brought things together through central organization of fun, of joy. Those are the founding principles of Applesauce Group. That affects my work.
Yeah.
All of these things are centric to the development and growth of this city. So many historic facts. Dr. King, likely 3 sitting presidents, I believe, have all gone to the Excelsior Club.
I want to bring that in, and you both can chime in on this, but for you to be able to be the founding president, organization member of Applesauce Group, what does that mean? Because you said it kind of stemmed from you being in McCrorey Heights, but you bring so many people together just on the west side of Charlotte. Let people understand what it is that you do.
So again, joy. I worked in experiential marketing. I know how to invigorate spaces. And from that work, I realized how important joy is. Mm-hmm. And if you can create joy, you can spark. That's the spark to get everything going.
Joy, happiness.
That joy, happiness.
Just happy
it is
feeling.
an amazing agent of healing.
Yeah.
So utilizing that joy to invigorate this community, show people this history of the west side of Charlotte. And in this space where many people come from many places, they have to know where they live now and the history and the things that made this space welcome for them to come.
Dr. Hanchett, when we talk about the Excelsior Club, I think whenever we say it, especially in this room, there's kind of a joy that comes over. Let people understand. We've had so many stories. Now people are trying to be able to bring the Excelsior Club back. But you tell me, history-wise, what do people need to understand?
Well, it's another situation where, life gives you lemons and you make lemonade. And African-American professionals who often had PhDs, master's degrees, almost everybody in McCrorey Heights had an advanced degree at a time when people in the neighborhood I grew up in, white neighborhood, did not. But they were not allowed into the country clubs. And so they built their own city club, and it had a bar and it had an entertainment space. Nat King Cole, who's one of my favorite singers from the mid-20th century, performed there. And in the last few years, it has fallen on hard times, partly because of bad decisions by government that didn't respect that area. The Highway 16 Brookshire Freeway cuts off that part of the Beatties Ford Road corridor from Johnson C. Smith. You can walk across the bridge and look down, and I don't look down because I can't do that. But it has cut the amount of parking at the Excelsior Club. It's one of the reasons why it's been hard to find a tenant, hard to find renovation money. And so when Winston Robinson talks about these things that keep happening over and over again, where land in McCrorey Heights is nibbled away, when you look at the proposals for Interstate 77, you go, man, it's happening again.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts, Winston? I mean, I know we got to kind of leave it there, but it is happening again, and this is in real time right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perpetual story, it's a perpetual story. It's 2025. However, what does that mean? And we're facing things like this, but McCrorey Heights deserves more. It deserves better, and we should really understand the jewel we have in Charlotte in this community.
Before we say goodbye to our viewers here, any websites, any resources that you want to be able to let people know to understand more about McCrorey Heights, the Applesauce Group, how can they find you?
Yeah, applesaucegroup.org. That's where I am, but I'm going to tell you, go to Dr. Hanchett's site. You have
HistorySouth.org, and then pump in McCrorey, McCorey, and you'll get there a little history of every place in the neighborhood. And if you're driving around, come out of downtown on West Trade Street. It automatically turns into Beatties Ford Road because this is Charlotte, where we don't let any street name be. And you'll come out, you cross the interstate highway, and there's a stoplight for Oaklawn Avenue. Turn right on Oaklawn Avenue when you see the big First Baptist West Church, designed by Harvey Gantt, Charlotte mayor, Charlotte architect. Turn to the right and start working your way around Patton Avenue, Madison Avenue, and you'll see some history.
Well, thank you for our history lesson, Dr. Tom Hanchett, Dr. Winston Robinson. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for watching Local Roots. You're watching Queen City News Plus. I'm Alicia Barnes.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.